What happens when a grandmother's cherished family names are erased by her own son's wife? The step she takes next leaves her entire family stunned. Dorothy Manning had always believed family was built on shared stories, traditions, and, most of all, names. The photos that lined her living room shelves bore witness: black and white pictures of her own parents, school portraits of her son David, faded Polaroids of birthdays and holidays, and, most precious of all, the annual Christmas photos of her grandchildren, Emma and Michael. It was Thursday morning, bright and breezy, and Dorothy was preparing a care package for her grandkids: hand-knitted hats, homemade cookies, and a stack of children's books. She hummed as she packed, imagining Emma's delight at the mittens, Michael's sweet tooth for ginger snaps. She would see them this weekend at David's house, a routine she cherished since they'd moved only 2 towns away. She finished her note, "To Emma and Michael, with all my love, Grandma Dorothy," and placed it on top of the box. Late afternoon, as Dorothy wrapped up her errands, her phone buzzed with a message from David. "Can you come over at 6 instead? Rachel wants to talk to you about something important." Dorothy's heart fluttered with anxiety. Something important was rarely good news. She arrived on time, clutching the care package and forcing a smile. Rachel greeted her at the door, polite but distant, her tone careful. "Come in, Dorothy. We'll have coffee in the dining room." The children weren't in sight. David joined them, his shoulders tense, his hands fidgeting with his phone. Rachel cleared her throat. "Dorothy, I want you to hear this from us first, so there's no confusion." She slid 2 envelopes across the table. "We've filed to legally change the kids' names. Emma will now be Amara, and Michael will be Milo. We felt it was best for our family." Dorothy's breath caught. For a moment, the room spun. She looked to David, searching for reassurance, but he avoided her eyes. "It's just a name, Mom. They'll adjust. Rachel's been thinking about this for a long time." Rachel added, "It's for their future, something that fits who we are now." Her words were measured, final. Dorothy tried to speak, but the words stuck. She looked at the envelopes, official, cold, printed with new names she barely recognized. "But why?" "Our family names. Your great-grandmother was Emma, David. And Michael." Her voice broke, emotion rising. Rachel didn't flinch. "We've made our decision. We'd appreciate your support." Dorothy's hands trembled as she clutched the package meant for Emma and Michael. The labels suddenly felt like relics. After an awkward silence, David suggested coffee. Dorothy tried to make conversation, asking about school and hobbies, but the answers were brief, forced. Rachel steered the topic to summer camps, avoiding Dorothy's eyes. The children eventually came down, shy and subdued. Rachel introduced them by their new names, Amara and Milo, gently but firmly correcting Dorothy each time she stumbled. Dorothy managed a stiff smile, handed them their gifts, and watched as they opened the package with polite thank yous. The mittens were tried on, the cookies sampled, but the warmth of their usual visits was gone. Dorothy sensed a wall, an invisible line she had never expected to cross. After dinner, Rachel pulled David aside for a whispered conversation in the hallway. Dorothy sat with the children, trying to reconnect, but the air felt heavy. She told them stories from when their father was their age, but the laughter didn't come as easily. Amara and Milo listened politely, but Dorothy could see them glancing to Rachel, seeking her approval. When it was time to go, Dorothy hugged the children tight. "I love you no matter what," she whispered. They nodded, distracted, already turning away. In the foyer, Rachel thanked her for coming, her smile thin. "We hope you'll respect our choice, Dorothy. Please use their new names from now on." Dorothy drove home in silence, the new names echoing in her mind. She parked outside her house and sat for a long time, staring at the stars, the feeling of loss deeper than she'd ever expected. Inside, she walked the familiar hallway, stopping at the photo shelf. She touched Emma's and Michael's pictures, her throat tight with grief. Her phone buzzed, David's follow-up message, "Thanks for understanding. It's just an adjustment." Dorothy didn't reply. Instead, she stood in the quiet house, listening to the clock tick, thinking about names, memories, and what family meant when the ground shifted beneath your feet. Dorothy barely slept. Each time she drifted off, she saw Emma and Michael, no, Amara and Milo, standing in her hallway, their faces unsure, voices out of reach. She woke before dawn, brewed strong tea, and watched the street outside turn gold as the sun rose. Her home, usually a sanctuary, now felt heavy with absence. She spent the morning keeping busy, watering plants, organizing her sewing supplies, dusting the bookshelves. Her hands lingered on the old photo albums, pages full of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and handwritten notes from the grandchildren, drawings signed Emma and Michael, cards written with shaky block letters. She traced the names, feeling the ache deepen. Later, Dorothy called her friend Eileen, needing a familiar ear. Eileen listened, outrage simmering beneath her calm. "It's not just a name. It's your family's story. Don't let them erase it." Dorothy sighed. "They're not doing it to hurt me. But I can't help feeling like a door's been closed." Eileen invited her over for lunch, promising homemade soup and company. The walk to Eileen's house was brisk, the air sharp with late spring. They ate at the kitchen table, sunlight warming the yellow-checkered cloth. Eileen offered gentle advice. "You have a right to your feelings. But don't beg for scraps of kindness. Stand tall. Remember who you are." They talked about their own mothers and the expectations of family. By the time Dorothy left, her chest felt lighter, her resolve just beginning to stir. Back at home, Dorothy decided to sort through the gifts she'd collected for her grandchildren over the years. The process was bittersweet. Stacks of books inscribed, "For Emma," and, "For Michael," a delicate necklace for Emma's 16th birthday, a carved wooden train for Michael. She tucked them away in a cedar chest, unsure if they'd ever reach the children as she'd intended. In the afternoon, Dorothy went to the bank to update her signature card. The branch manager, a kind man she'd known for decades, greeted her warmly. "Grandkids still keeping you busy?" he asked. Dorothy smiled, then hesitated. "Not as much these days. Things are different." He nodded, offering sympathy without prying. On her way home, Dorothy stopped at the florist. She bought a small bouquet of daisies and visited the cemetery, placing the flowers on her mother's grave. She knelt in the cool grass, whispering old family names, letting the wind carry her words. "You'd have loved them, Mama. I hope they never forget where they came from." Evening fell. Dorothy fixed herself a modest supper and wrote a letter to Emma and Michael, or Amara and Milo, telling them about her day, the flowers, a silly story about their father as a boy. She signed it Grandma Dorothy, then tucked it into a drawer, uncertain if it would ever be sent. Later, Dorothy sat with her laptop at the kitchen table, rereading her will and estate plan. She lingered over each line, weighing old intentions against new realities. Her heart ached with every word, but her mind grew clearer. Legacy was more than money, and her story was still hers to tell. As she closed her laptop, Dorothy gazed at the hallway full of photos, her family's faces watching over her. The ache of loss was sharp, but underneath, something else stirred, a quiet sense that maybe, just maybe, she was not finished making her mark. Dorothy awoke the next morning to the sound of birds on the windowsill, sunlight spilling across her quilt. The ache from the day before remained, but a quiet determination hummed beneath her grief. She decided it was time to try again, to reach out, to see her grandchildren, whatever names they carried now. She called David's house. Rachel answered, her voice clipped but polite. "David's out running errands. The kids are finishing homework. Is there something you needed, Dorothy?" Dorothy hesitated, then asked, "Could I take the children for ice cream this weekend? Just a short visit." Rachel paused. "We'll check the schedule. I'll let you know." Dorothy spent the afternoon preparing, baking her famous banana bread, ironing her favorite blouse, and dusting the old high chair in the dining room just in case. She checked her phone every hour, but no reply came from Rachel or David. The silence weighed heavier with each passing hour. To distract herself, Dorothy visited the church. The weekly quilting group was meeting in the fellowship hall, laughter and gentle conversation filling the room. Dorothy slipped into her old seat, the familiar thrum of sewing machines a comfort. She chatted with Helen about grandchild troubles. Helen's eldest was marrying outside the faith, a cause for tension at home. "We can only control our own hearts," Helen said, patting Dorothy's hand. "The rest is up to them." As she stitched, Dorothy shared stories of Emma's first steps, Michael's giggles, the way the children used to play hide-and-seek in her garden. The group listened, offering sympathy and sharing their own tales of shifting family tides. "You're not alone, Dot," Ruth said gently. "These changes, they cut deep. But don't let them take away your joy. Back home, Dorothy checked her messages again. Nothing from Rachel or David. She sat on the porch, watching neighborhood kids race their bikes past, their laughter ringing down the block. She remembered Emma's hair streaming behind her as she ran through the sprinklers, Michael's wide-eyed wonder at a frog in the garden pond. She missed the simple moments, the ones that made her house feel full. Evening brought an unexpected visitor, David, alone, standing awkwardly on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets. "Thought I'd stop by, see how you're doing," he said. Dorothy invited him in, offering coffee and banana bread. They sat in the kitchen, sunlight slanting through the curtains. Conversation was slow at first, David talking about work, Dorothy about her garden. Finally, she broached the subject. "I miss the children, David. I miss calling them by the names I gave them gifts for, told them stories with. This is hard for me." David looked away. "I know, Mom. Rachel, she feels strongly about it. I want things to be easy, but they aren't. The kids are adjusting." His voice was weary, uncertain. Dorothy nodded, swallowing her disappointment. "I just want to be part of their lives. I hope you'll let me." David didn't promise anything. He finished his coffee, squeezed her shoulder, and left with a quiet, "I'll talk to Rachel." That night, Dorothy walked her house, running her fingers over picture frames, whispering names, old and new, into the quiet rooms. She sat at her desk, pulled out her will again, and started a new list, not of money or heirlooms, but of memories she wanted to preserve, stories she refused to let slip away. As she wrote, the hurt remained, but it was joined by a small ember of strength. Whatever happened next, Dorothy would not let herself vanish from her family's story. Not in name, and not in legacy. Saturday morning arrived gray and humid, the kind of weather that made Dorothy's knees ache and her mind drift. She'd spent Friday night waiting for a text that never came. Each hour had brought a flicker of hope, then the slow settling of disappointment. Still, she woke early and made cinnamon rolls from scratch, just in case her phone would buzz with a last-minute invitation to see her grandchildren. The kitchen filled with the smell of baking, warm and sweet. Dorothy set the table for three, out of habit, out of hope. She arranged the rolls on her grandmother's china, poured orange juice, and waited, the ticking of the kitchen clock loud in the quiet. 10 o'clock came and went. By noon, the cinnamon rolls had cooled, the juice was put away, and the table returned to its normal, solitary order. Dorothy tried to distract herself with small chores, watering the porch geraniums, organizing pantry shelves, making a grocery list for the coming week. Still, the empty chairs pulled at her attention, her heart thumping a rhythm of longing and regret. She decided to walk to the post office, the air sticky but the movement a relief. There was a letter waiting, Rachel's handwriting, neat and formal. Dorothy tore it open on the steps, anxiety prickling her skin. The letter was short and businesslike. "Dear Dorothy, after careful thought, we believe it is best for the children if visits are minimized for the time being. We are working hard to help them transition into their new identities and routines. We hope you understand. Please respect our decision. Sincerely, Rachel and David." Dorothy's hands shook as she read and reread the words. She sat on the post office bench, trying to steady her breath. The world seemed to shrink around her, the colors duller, the hum of cars more distant. It felt, for a moment, like she had become invisible. Back home, Dorothy put away the letter, smoothing it flat and tucking it behind family photos. She called Eileen, who listened without interruption, her voice soothing but firm. "You deserve better than this. Their choices may stand, but yours do too. Don't let them rewrite your story." The afternoon dragged. Dorothy took out her estate plan, reading each line. She saw her grandchildren's names, Emma and Michael, listed as beneficiaries, along with small notes about jewelry, letters, and special heirlooms. She thought of how each item carried a story, how much she'd hoped to share those stories in person, passing on more than objects, passing on history, identity, love. As evening settled, Dorothy found herself at the local park, sitting alone on a bench as children played in the distance. She watched as a grandmother helped a young girl tie her shoelaces, as another family gathered for a picnic. A pang of envy mixed with a fierce longing rose inside her. That night, Dorothy made a decision. She pulled out pen and paper and began drafting new letters, one to David, another to Rachel, and 2 for the grandchildren to be opened when they were older. In each, she poured memories. The meaning behind their names, stories of their ancestors, the love she felt for them before, during, and after any name change. She finished with, "Your roots are deep. Your name is a story. You are loved, always." Then, with trembling hands, Dorothy called her attorney, leaving a message to schedule a meeting. Her heart pounded with a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. Before bed, Dorothy opened the chest at the end of her bed and placed the new letters on top of the gifts she'd saved. She ran her hand over the stack, promising herself that her story, her truth, would not be erased. She slept fitfully, dreams swirling with names, voices, and hope that, someday, the past would not be lost. Dorothy awoke to a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in weeks. After breakfast, she found her attorney's number scribbled on a sticky note by the phone and dialed the office. The receptionist recognized her voice immediately, scheduling an appointment for Monday morning. "Bring any documents you want reviewed, Mrs. Manning," she said gently. Dorothy thanked her, a new determination in her voice. The rest of the day was spent sorting paperwork, old wills, account statements, titles, and letters. Dorothy cleared her dining table, stacking documents neatly, separating what mattered from what could be discarded. She read every line carefully, making notes in the margins, circling anything that referenced her grandchildren by their birth names. Each signature, each clause, felt like a tether to the life she'd lived, a life she was not ready to let go. Later, Dorothy baked a batch of lemon bars and packed half for Eileen. She walked over, enjoying the breeze, and found her friend pruning roses in the front yard. Eileen greeted her with a hug. They sat on the porch, sharing lemon bars and talking through every detail of Dorothy's plan. Eileen listened, offering advice and unwavering support. "Remember, legacy is yours to define. If you want your history honored, you're right to put it in writing." Inspired, Dorothy returned home and began drafting new sections for her will. Stories about her parents, notes about why she'd chosen certain heirlooms for Emma and Michael, letters addressed directly to them. She described the Christmases spent in matching pajamas, the summer picnics under the old willow tree, the family recipes passed down through generations. She included instructions that these stories be given with each gift, her hope that, even if names changed, the truth would find its way home. Saturday evening, Dorothy attended a community potluck at the church. She brought her lemon bars, which disappeared quickly. Neighbors chatted, swapping stories about grandchildren, sharing laughter and small complaints. Dorothy found herself in a circle of women her age, each with their own worries, estranged children, grandkids lost to distance or divorce, the ache of being left behind by modern life. The shared stories lifted her spirits. She was not alone in her struggle. Back home, Dorothy began organizing her photo albums, labeling each one with names, dates, and handwritten captions. She slipped a letter into the back of each album, her version of family history, meant to outlast any legal document. The process took hours, but it soothed her. On Sunday, Dorothy visited the cemetery again, this time bringing a rose for her late husband. She knelt beside the headstone and whispered, "They're changing the names, Bill. I wish you were here to tell me what to do." She sat in silence, finding comfort in the presence of her memories. That night, Dorothy laid out her clothes for her attorney appointment: navy skirt, white blouse, her mother's pearl brooch pinned at her collar. She reviewed her notes one last time, satisfied she'd done all she could to prepare. As she drifted off to sleep, Dorothy felt a new steadiness. The pain of loss lingered, but beneath it was a quiet pride. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it with her history intact, and her love made unbreakable, in story, in gift, and in name. Monday dawned with the promise of rain. Dorothy dressed carefully, smoothing her blouse and fastening her mother's pearl brooch, a small anchor from another time. The drive to the attorney's office was quiet. She watched the familiar streets pass, each tree and porch a reminder of how much, and how little, her world had changed. At the office, she was greeted warmly. Mr. Blake, her attorney, offered her tea and a comfortable chair. They reviewed her current will, page by page. Dorothy explained the recent changes, her grandchildren's names, the restrictions on her visits, the ache of feeling erased. Mr. Blake listened attentively, his pen poised over yellow legal paper. "I want my legacy to be clear," Dorothy said, her voice steady. "My story. My truth. I want Emma and Michael to know who they are, no matter what names they're given." Mr. Blake nodded. We can absolutely make sure of that. You have full discretion over your estate. Would you like to add letters to your will? Conditions. We can specify exactly how and when things are given, and to whom. They worked together for over an hour. Dorothy dictated her wishes in detail. Family photo albums with letters to Emma and Michael, gifts to be given on their milestones, graduations, weddings, first homes. She described each item, each story, every hope she still held for her grandchildren. For the first time in weeks, she felt as though her voice truly mattered. At the end of the meeting, Mr. Blake printed a draft of the new will. Take this home, review it, and let me know if you'd like changes. When you're ready, we'll make it official. Dorothy left the office lighter, the clouds parting above as she stepped outside. On her way home, Dorothy stopped by the park. She sat on a bench beneath the willow tree, watching children play on the swings, mothers calling to them across the grass. She wondered if Amara and Milo, Emma and Michael, would ever find their way here, if they'd remember this place from their earliest days. She closed her eyes, whispering a quiet prayer for them, for herself, for healing that felt just out of reach. That afternoon, Dorothy treated herself to lunch at a little cafe, something she hadn't done alone in years. She savored her meal, allowing herself to linger without hurry. She wrote notes to Eileen and Helen, thanking them for their support, and included a photograph of the three of them at the church potluck. Back at home, Dorothy filed the draft will and her letters away, making a list of final touches she'd like to add. She sorted more photographs, tucking extra notes between the pages, a memory about a trip to the seaside, a recipe for Emma's favorite cookies, a story about Michael's first steps. Evening came gently. Dorothy made tea and sat in her armchair, staring out at the gentle drizzle painting her garden silver. She felt sorrow for all that had changed, but a quiet pride as well. Her life, her story, was hers to shape, no matter how the world turned. Before bed, she placed her mother's brooch back in its velvet box, laying it atop the letters for her grandchildren. Her hand lingered on the cool pearls, a bridge across generations. She slept soundly, for the first time in weeks, knowing she'd begun to reclaim her voice and her legacy. The week moved slowly, each day marked by small decisions and old routines. Dorothy reviewed her new will in the evenings, reading and rereading every clause. She added notes in careful script, reminders of birthdays, favorite stories, details only a grandmother would know. Each word stitched a piece of her love and identity into the fabric of her estate. On Wednesday, she met with Eileen for lunch at the local library cafe. They found a sunny spot by the window, sharing soup and sandwiches. Dorothy described the changes she'd made to her will, the letters she'd written, the pain of missing Emma and Michael. Eileen listened, her hand on Dorothy's, promising, "You're doing right by your heart, even if they don't see it yet." That afternoon, Dorothy walked through the neighborhood, stopping by the florist for lilies. She left a bouquet on her daughter's grave, a quiet visit, a whispered update. "Your niece and nephew have new names now. But you're remembered. I'll see to it." The cemetery was calm, a place of memory and silent vows. Later that day, David called. His voice was hesitant. "Rachel says you've been making changes to your will. She's worried you're cutting the kids out." Dorothy's grip tightened on the phone, her voice measured but honest. "They're still my grandchildren. I've left them gifts, stories, memories, family things. But I have to do what's right for me." David sighed, the tension crackling. "We just want what's best for everyone, Mom." Dorothy replied, "So do I." That evening, Dorothy found herself paging through Emma and Michael's old schoolwork. She sorted artwork, essays, and holiday cards into boxes labeled with their birth names. She included letters explaining the significance of each piece, her handwriting steady and determined. Each box became a time capsule, a way to anchor the past, no matter what the present demanded. Friday brought another letter from Rachel, this one more emotional. "We feel you're punishing the children for something that isn't their fault. Please reconsider." Dorothy sat at her desk, heart pounding. She replied with gentle firmness, "I love Amara and Milo as much as I loved Emma and Michael. My gifts and stories are for them, whenever they're ready. But I must also honor my truth." On Saturday, Dorothy attended church, staying afterward for coffee and quiet talk with Helen and Ruth. They offered advice, support, and, most importantly, a space where Dorothy didn't have to explain herself. Their friendship was a balm, helping her withstand the ache of distance from her son's family. That night, Dorothy took out the velvet box with her mother's pearls, turning each bead over in her palm. She added a new letter, one to be opened on a future birthday, telling the story of the brooch and the women who wore it before her. She tucked the letter in the box and placed it atop the other keepsakes. Sleep came in slow waves, her mind full of faces and names, of loss and resilience. Dorothy understood, at last, that love could be stubborn as it was deep, and that some stories deserved to be told, even if they waited years to be heard. Sunday morning dawned bright and peaceful. Dorothy took her time with breakfast, savoring the quiet, the smell of fresh coffee, and the sun warming the curtains. Her kitchen, once filled with children's voices, now felt calm but not empty. Echoes of laughter and the tap of small shoes still lingered in the corners. After church, she joined Eileen and Helen for lunch at the cafe. They asked about her estate plan, her heart, her next steps. Dorothy spoke plainly. "I've done all I can. My story is written, in my words. Maybe someday the children will read it, maybe not. But I'm at peace." Her friends nodded, surrounding her with understanding and respect. That afternoon, Dorothy returned home to find a small envelope in her mailbox, Rachel's handwriting again. Inside was a simple photo, Emma and Michael, grinning in the backyard, holding the mittens Dorothy had made years ago. No letter, just the image. Dorothy's breath caught, grief and hope tangling inside her. She placed the photo on her mantel, whispering the old names, a private blessing. Feeling a surge of resolve, Dorothy gathered her keepsake boxes, family albums, and the letters for her grandchildren. She set them all out on the dining table, reading through each letter one last time. Her pen flew across the pages, adding lines, memories, messages of love that transcended names. She placed instructions with her attorney to deliver the gifts and stories at milestone moments, graduation, marriage, whenever the time was right. As dusk fell, Dorothy called David. The conversation was halting but honest. "I got the photo." "Thank you," she said softly. "I hope you'll always tell them about where they come from. Their names may change, but their story doesn't end here." David's silence was heavy, but his voice trembled when he answered, "I'll try, Mom. I promise." That evening, Dorothy took a walk through her garden. She paused by the lilac bush Emma had planted on her 5th birthday and touched the smooth bark of the willow tree where Michael once built a fort. The sky flared pink and gold overhead, a silent benediction. Before bed, Dorothy stood in her hallway, surrounded by generations of photos. She touched each frame, whispering the old names and the new, letting both live side by side. She knew the world would go on, names would shift, but her love and legacy would endure, woven through every story, every letter, every memory carefully saved. Dorothy slipped into bed, her heart full, not just with sorrow, but with pride, hope, and the knowledge that her truth would find its way, however long it took. She had made her mark, and that was enough.